Hello guys, this video is for those that needed a little bit more guidance, help. I got some emails and some questions in our first Teams meeting Monday, so I decided to jump on real quick and record a couple of videos to help you out. Please make sure you look at the full tutorial video that goes through the entire lesson. Gives lots of examples and explanations, but some people just wanted to see a full process and a presentation. So I have two videos. This one is explaining how I filled out my bracket, the process I went through, and my other video is going to be me pretending like I'm doing the actual presentation, which is what you guys are doing and submitting by the end of the week. All right, so for this video, I took one example from the PowerPoint lesson and video and decided to totally finish it to show you what it would look like. So in that one, my topic was about mythological creatures. If you don't know what that means, they're creatures that are could be human-like, but they're not humans, that come from different storytelling traditions throughout the world. I tried to pick ones that are somewhat frightening, and I tried to pick some from throughout the world. So I came up with a list of my top 16, and you can see that in the PowerPoint, my list of the top 16. I then put them in the bracket here. And I put the dragon as number 1, the Minotaur. I just went through my list that I came up with and really just placed them and made sure I didn't have any together that were obvious, like which one was going to win before I even got to deciding or picking criteria. So just pay attention to the outside is what I did first. Okay, outside 2 columns. So dragon, Anansi, sirens, banshee, trolls, the kraken, Chimaira, Bunyip, Minotaur Vampire, werewolves, chupacabra, sphinx, kappa, basilisk, and centaur. Okay, so I put them all in there, and then I said, okay, what specifically am I deciding about those mythological creatures? And I decided my guiding question, which is really my main claim, is up here at the top. I ended up adding it up here where it normally says 16-seated bracket. So it said, what I was trying to decide is what is the most terrifying, scary, frightening mythological creature. So that really guided my thinking. All right, so that's what I'm going to prove. That's what I want to prove. That's going to be my main claim, is going to be whoever wins, okay? Which, as you can see right here, I decided it's the vampire. I'm going to explain some of that in my process in this video, okay? So I can't just decide it based off how I feel. I need it to be based off real criteria or really good reasons. Okay, so criteria 1 is how it kills its prey. I decided that something that makes creatures really frightening is the way that it kills people. Okay, there are just some ways of dying that sound way worse than others. Okay, so that was one thing I wanted to look at. Another one was how sneaky or quiet it is, because when I think of something terrifying or frightening, it's often something that sneaks up on you and you don't know it's there until it's too late and there's no escaping it. And so that was a huge factor for me. And then lastly, for a tiebreaker, I decided to go with popularity or intelligence of the creature. That if I still couldn't decide it based off those first 2 criteria, that I would then go off of that thing. So I'm going to go through and explain the rounds and what I decided. So I have all of my creatures listed on the outside. Okay, they're all on the outside. Then I just need to decide between the matchups. So I go to this number 1 that has the parentheses. This is explained in the PowerPoint, by the way, but just in case that didn't make sense to you. I look at that and I'm going to figure out what to write on this line. Now I've already filled it in because I went through this. But I looked at dragon and Anansi. Anansi comes from Western African tradition. Really kind of like a demigod, or some refer to it as a god. There's lots of different forms it can be in, because first of all, it does change forms into other animals, but there's a question of whether it's a person with 8 legs or a spider with a human face, all these things. But then there's dragons from Eastern and Western traditions that some of them fly, some of them don't. I'm not going to get into there's a lot about dragons you can go into, but I'm just going to go with the basic, like fire-breathing dragon that can fly, okay? That's all I'm doing. They're also known for being very smart. My criteria was how it kills its prey and how sneaky or quiet it is. So Anansi they're not known for killing people. really. I mean, I think there's some of that stuff out there, but it's more of a trickster god where Anansi is just really smart and able to manipulate people. So that's kind of frightening, but I'm not really afraid of Anansi killing me. So I didn't really feel like he'd win out here. I think a dragon is much more terrifying because it's smart and it can burn you alive or it can just rip you apart. I mean, and it can fly and chase you. So to me, that was frightening. It's not as sneaky and quiet, but dragons can be sneaky and quiet, especially if you know like Tolkien's dragons from Lord of the Rings. Okay. So that's how I processed that. I just looked back at my criteria and I compared the two. Okay, that's why we had the thing on compare and contrast. Okay, so then I go to the next one. See the number 2 here? I got to figure out what goes on this line right here. And right now you see I filled in sirens. Okay, so sirens come from Greek mythology and they are these like half woman, half, it depends on the story. Some they're half woman, half fish, some they're half woman, half bird. Sometimes, you know, there's all this variety. But she's known for, and there's also male sirens, by the way. They're known for singing sailors to their death, like singing these beautiful, enchanting songs that cause them to get like in a trance and go toward it. And it causes these guys to shipwreck and die. Okay. They don't always die. Sometimes they just get shipwrecked and trapped there. Banshees come from Irish Celtic tradition mythology. They don't really go after people and kill them. They foretell people's deaths. So for me, they're scary looking and just really creepy. Like if you look up information about banshees, I think they look scarier than sirens. But as far as which one's actually going to kill you and be sneaky, it's the sirens. So I picked the sirens to win that one. Okay. So that's what I do on here is I just start filling these in. So I literally just typed in this box sirens when I decided that. And then I said, okay, what about, then I do this whole column. So here I decided between trolls and a kraken, that a kraken, they call it kraken and kraken, it depends on the person. That's like a giant sea squid thing, okay? Trolls are on land, but I decided a kraken just like comes from the water, really frightening. There's no escaping it. And then you like get ripped apart or drown, which to me is awful. I mean, trolls are scary. This was actually a pretty tough decision between those two. But it came down to popularity or it wasn't really intelligence, it was popularity. Anyway. And then there was Chimaira and the Bunyip. The Bunyip is from Australia. It's Aboriginal in nature. And it lives in swamps and can attack people. And some describe it kind of dog-like with other long neck features and stuff, some with like a hippo type of body. But a Chimaira is it's got a goat body with like a goat head and a lion's head at the front, and at the back its tail is like a serpent, or some call it a dragon's head. So it's a 3-headed creature, but it's like along its body, and then it breathes fire, but it can't fly. Okay, it cannot fly. That's one of its kind of weaknesses. I decided that between the Bunyip and the Chimaira, that the Chimaira would win. Okay, because how it kills its prey. I mean, the Bunyip, it just rips people apart, and I figured the Chimaira can do that, but it can also burn you. The Bunyip's slightly quieter, but I felt like the Chimaira's way to kill its prey was more frightening. And then I also thought about the popularity. Chimairas are a bit more well known than the Bunyip. There's more known about the Chimaira than the Bunyip. And the Bunyip tend to isolate their prey are women and children. So that was another thing when I was looking at the tiebreakers on this stuff. It's kind of hard once you get to tiebreakers. You kind of just got to think outside the box. Okay. So then over here I did Minotaur and Vampire. My thought process on that is, you know, Minotaurs are part human, part bull, and I believe they have other capabilities, but they're really strong. They just aren't as quiet and sneaky and manipulative as a vampire. To me, vampire was a very easy pick there because vampires can change forms. They can entrance people. They can make them go crazy. Anyway, and then they have like incredible strength. They live forever. I mean, the list goes on and on for vampire. And then of course they're known throughout the world in different mythologies and different cultures. So I thought for all three criteria, the vampire was just stronger than the Minotaur. And so I just went through and I did this with all of these and I just picked the first winner. So then I was down to my top 8 out of the 16. So now it was competition between the dragon and the sirens, the kraken and the chimera, the sphinx and the basilisk, and the vampire and the chupacabra. Okay, so then I had to decide on those ones. So then I'd say, okay, a dragon versus a siren. How it kills its prey, okay, a dragon rips them apart, burns them alive. Sirens, they don't necessarily kill you. You could drown, you could get shipwrecked, but I didn't read anything about them like attacking you once you got shipwrecked. You know what I mean? You're more of like kept there. It's weird. It's not like they really go out to kill you. So I picked the dragon, okay? Then there's the kraken, the chimera. I picked the chimera because he's not bound to be just in the ocean. It seems like the kraken is more of a danger just to ships. So the chimera, they both had horrible ways they kill people. They are both pretty, I mean, the kraken is huge. You'd kind of hear it, but it'd be pretty, I don't know. To me, it seems like it could sneak up on a ship and hide in the sounds of the ocean. And a chimera, I don't know how loud it is. So I decided a chimera was much more horrific because of the breathing fire aspect, and getting burned alive and ripped apart would be far worse than, you know, just having this creature attack your ship and make you drown. I don't know. Sounds really awful, doesn't it? Okay, so the next one was between a vampire and a chupacabra. And again, the vampire, just because of all those things I listed earlier, just I felt like would be more frightening than a chupacabra. There's a lot of mystery around a chupacabra, and so I kind of felt like it had a chance. I mean, this one was tough to decide between, but I ended up going with the vampire. All right, next is between sphinx and basilisk, and a basilisk kills you by just looking at you. And it's a serpent creature. It's also combined with other weird things like a chicken head or whatever. It's so bizarre. But the bottom line is it just looks at you and you die. The Sphinx, you have to answer riddles to survive. There's a chance it won't kill you, but it's really hard. And it just like rips you apart and eats you. So I picked the basilisk because it seems like that thing's gonna sneak up on you and slither up on you, and it's just gonna look at you and you're gonna die. So I felt like that was complete frightening because of how it kills you and how sneaky or quiet it is, okay? All right, so then I got down to these ones and I got my top 4. These are my top 4 most terrifying mythological creatures at this point. So I'm between the dragon, the chimera, the vampire, and the basilisk. So then I do the same thing. I look at the dragon and I look at the chimera and I talk about it. I decide in my own head which one I think will be the winner, and I went with the dragon. Big reason for that is because it can fly. They both breathe fire. I don't know how smart a chimera is compared to a dragon because I just know more about a dragon. A lot of dragons, they have, you can't pierce their armor. It just depends on the mythology. So I just went with the dragon because they just are so formidable. And then over on this side, I was between the vampire and the basilisk. And I thought, you know, yes, the basilisk can kill you and it's sneaky and just by looking at you. But to me, it's even more frightening with a vampire because they can entrance you and make you a slave to them as long as they want. And they can slowly drain the life out of you, which I almost feel like I'd rather have the faster way out with the basilisk than to be captured by a vampire and kept prisoner. That's kind of where my brain went with looking at my criteria and thinking it through. So then I was down to my top 2. My top 2 was the vampire and the dragon. So I needed to decide my overall winner. And again, this really came down to how sneaky or quiet they can be. Dragons really are a lot bigger than a vampire, and vampires can blend in with humans. And so I would think that while a dragon can like decimate a whole population, a large group of people, you can hear it coming and people getting frightened. And to me, the vampire at the end of the day is to me the most stealthy, sneaky of these creatures. And because it can pretend to be human, and be really controlling of humans as well, I felt like it was the most terrifying because of that. So that's how I filled out my bracket, guys. That's how I came up with what I was going to prove, which is my main claim. I came up with criteria that I stuck with, even though I was tempted to go away from it. Like, I love werewolves. I wish it would have made it further, but it didn't. I didn't think the vampire was going to win when I first started this list. I kind of thought that maybe a dragon would win. But once I had my criteria, I had to stick with it. So that's how I filled it out. Once I have this filled out, and really that Word document sheet I gave you takes you through figuring this stuff out to get going to where you can come to this and start filling it out. So all this stuff I have at the top with the question and the criteria is what's in that Word document. You don't have to turn in that Word document. It's there to help you understand how to do this and to actually have a place to write this stuff down before you put it on the chart, okay? It also has the questions in there that you need to answer in your presentation. So my other video is going to be me actually pretending to do a presentation where I share my screen. So you can check that one out if you still need to, but here's this one that just went through how I filled out my chart, how I made decisions. Remember, the key is you have to pick something you know a lot about that you can talk about intelligently, whatever that is. If it's, you know, food is a pretty easy one to come up with 16 things, but make sure you have good criteria for it. You have to know, like, pick a type of food. That's why you saw mine with the fruits and vegetables. And I was trying to pick the one that was the tastiest, that would appeal to most people, and healthy. So those are my 3 criteria on the fruits and vegetables. So you just have to have really specific things you're looking for in comparing them. You can't just say, I want to figure out the best cheeseburger. Okay, well, what about it? According to whom? Do you want the one that's like the juiciest and has the most options for customizing it for what you like? Do you want it to be the cheapest so it doesn't cost very much? So those are things to think about as you're picking a topic. Again, pick something you know quite a bit about. I mean, each of us comes from a different background and have different interests, so it's hard for me to, I can't really assign you something to do it on. You've got to pick that. It has to be something you know a lot about, that comes from your life and your background. So find something cool to do. Hopefully this helped you out. If you still have questions, please let me know. But you really kind of just have to try coming up with a topic and brainstorming, you know, 16 things that I could decide what's the best of the best with this, and narrowing it down from there. Okay, so good luck, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with in the end. All right, bye. Hey, good morning. For my bracket project, I decided to look at mythological creatures from around the world, ones that I'm familiar with. And at first I didn't know, I think I wanted just to do the best mythological creature, but I ended up narrowing it down to which is the most frightening or scary mythological creature. So I came up with 16 competitors, and they're on the outside of my chart. My criteria was I wanted to look at first and second. These were kind of like 2 things I looked at the same time, was how it kills its prey, which are humans, what I was looking at, and then 2, how sneaky or quiet the creature is. And then my tiebreaker was how popular it is or how intelligent the creature is, kind of like how much it can blend in with society, all that type of stuff. My overall winner of the most frightening mythological creature was the vampire. I was kind of surprised by this, but not. I know vampires have lots of powers. They're also pretty frightening because they can masquerade as humans. They can pretend to be humans. So I knew going into it that they'd be pretty competitive, but I didn't know for sure if they would win overall, depending on who they came up against. I also knew dragons would be pretty competitive because they are because of all the powers they also have of flying, of having like this armor on them, scales that in most myths is hard to penetrate. They can breathe fire usually. It just depends on the mythology. So I knew they'd go pretty far. I didn't really know if it would go that far though, because some dragons are really quiet and stealthy and some are not. It just depends on the tradition and the stories it comes from. So that was kind of surprising about the end winner for me. One of the hardest decisions to make on this one, or something that kind of confused me a little bit, was when I was deciding between like the dragon and Anansi. Anansi is like a demigod and doesn't really like go out to kill people. And the same thing with the Banshee. They're both like part of myth and they can be kind of scary for people, but they aren't ones that are malicious and go out trying to attack people. So those two, if I were redoing it, I probably would not have included them in the top 16. It was hard to decide between trolls and the Kraken on the left-hand side in the first round because they are both frightening in the way that they kill people. I think they both have the potential to be quiet, but to also be loud. Like a troll, I imagine them grunting and making noises, and they're really big, and they probably, as they're coming through a forest or something, make a lot of noise. But a kraken kind of is big as well, giant sea creature. Its noises get kind of covered up by the sounds of the ocean. So that was kind of the deciding factor there between them, but it still was pretty difficult. I had to think about it and process through it for a while. So I had a lot of fun deciding between all of these. I thought the centaur would go further, and I also thought the minotaur might go further, but both of them don't really have much beyond their speed and their strength going for them. And the ones they were up against really had this power to be ruthless and really quiet with their prey. So in the end, those ones got eliminated pretty early. So that's my presentation, and it came out that the vampire is the most frightening mythological creature because they are quiet when they stalk their prey. They can change into other creatures and forms. They can change into a bat and fly around that way. They can pretend to be human. They have a humanoid form. They can also entrance people and keep them imprisoned. They're known for doing that. And then they just use people until they've eventually killed them. And they, of course, suck their blood. There are ways to kill vampires, so there is a defense that humans have against them, but I didn't really look at that with my criteria. So in the end, the vampire is the most frightening mythological creature.